I want to thank Reverend Cohall and the Lenox Road Baptist Church for their hospitality today. We're going to be having a meeting later on here with community leaders. Congratulations to Reverend Cohall, 25 years serving as pastor. It's my first chance to formally congratulate Eric Adams on his election victory. I am very excited about it on a personal level. As a Queens boy, born and bred, Eric Adams is a Brooklyn boy, but he's got a little Queens in him too, you can tell. I worked with Eric when he was in the Senate, and he is going to be extraordinary. I believe that. We did a lot of good things together. He showed real leadership. He showed the ability to get things done. He took on difficult issues, and we developed a true mutual respect and friendship. On a professional level, I believe that Eric and I come from the same political philosophy. We are progressive Democrats, and we have the same definition of what it means to be a progressive Democrat. You know, progressive Democrat is not a new term. Everybody now has their own definition of what it means to be progressive. It's not a word that just entered the lexicon. Franklin Delano Roosevelt ran as the progressive Democrat. It has a tradition, and it has a meaning. And what it means to be a progressive is a government and a leader who actually makes progress for people. You can't be a progressive without that word progress. That is the key to it. Not talking about progress, not proposing progress, not theoretical progress, not progress in an academic sense, but actual progress for real people who have real problems and need government to provide real results. That's what we believe. And we are united in that. And we are at a critical moment in New York City where we need progressive government, but we need progressive government that works and delivers and is competent and makes change on the ground because we have real problems. We're going to talk today about gun violence. We have more people dying of gun violence than COVID. 77% of the victims of gun violence, black and brown. 77%. It is a major civil rights issue. And we have to get to the young people, target youth group 18 to 24. And it's not enough to say, no, don't do drugs, don't join a gang. There has to be an alternative. There has to be hope. And we're going to be working with the community today. The state is going to be announcing 4,000 summer jobs and full-time jobs with training for youth in New York City. So there is an alternative for them. Homelessness is a major problem. And I mean, think about this. 50 years ago, we discovered the horrendous situations in mental health hospitals, and we went through deinstitutionalization. We wouldn't subject people to mental health hospitals that didn't treat them well. Deinstitutionalization. Where are we 50 years later? Now we're saying people can sleep on a park bench or a subway car. People are sleeping back in subway tunnels again. That was the answer to deinstitutionalization? That was progress? We know how to help the homeless. We've done it, been working at it for years. They need facilities, they need services, they need mental health treatment, and they need housing. But don't defend their right to sleep on a subway car. We're better than that. Provide the services and facilities and shelters that they need, and don't provide shelters that are more unsafe than the subway tunnel. Crime is a major problem. And it's not going to go away on its own. This is a difficult issue. We have to reform and repair the police relationship with the community. The George Floyd homicide flashpoint. Put an exclamation point all across the nation in this situation. We have to reform policing and community relations. The answer is not abolish the police. You abolish the police, who do you help? You abolish the police, only rich people have police. They'll still have their gated communities, they'll have a doorman, they'll have a driver, they'll hire an ex-NYPD officer to provide their security. But you need trust and respect restored between the police and the community. And all of this happens at a critical moment for New York City. We are in a post-COVID transition, a post-COVID transformation. And what we do in this moment decides the future of the city of New York. We just went through a year that changed the dynamic. You're not going to put Zoom back in the box. That doesn't go away. People moved out of the city, businesses moved out of the city. They're in the Hamptons, they're in the Hudson Valley, they're in Florida, they're in Aspen. Do they come back? Will they come back? It depends on what we do. And they're not going to come back if they're afraid to walk down the street, and if they're afraid to take the subways, and if they're afraid of being harassed. New York City has to be welcoming. And we have to tackle these issues and tackle these problems. We have to show them a positive future. That's why I've been working so hard on major new projects. We're going to build a new airport. We're going to build a new train station. Why? So people see progress and they believe in New York once again. This is a national problem. They're all national problems. But it's New York's place to fix them. Why? Because New York State, New York City are the progressive capital of the nation. That's our legacy. That is our destiny. And we have tackled many problems first in New York. First to do marriage equality, first to do $15 minimum wage, first to do paid family leave, first to do the best gun control law in the nation. That's who we are. And these are national problems, but they'll be tackled here. We will do it in partnership, and we'll show the nation how the job is done and what it means to be a progressive Democrat. I believe Eric Adams can do that. It is not easy. It's hard. Two elements, courage and competence. And I believe Eric Adams has both those elements. And I pledge today to work in full partnership with him to solve these problems in New York, to reestablish effective progressive government, and to show the country how we tackle these problems in a progressive, humane, intelligent, effective way, and how we make government work again. I am excited. I'm excited for all the people in the city of New York and all the people in the state of New York. Because as you know, as goes New York City, goes New York State. It is an interwoven destiny. And we are going to make New York City better than ever before. That's our pledge. Congratulations, Eric Adams.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Thank you so much, Governor. And I am so happy that you joined us here at Lenox Road. And I, too, want to say congratulations to the pastor, who I consider to be one of the most important spiritual leaders in the borough of Brooklyn. And also agree with you, the way goes New York City goes New York State, and in fact goes America. This is such an important place for all of us. And I am happy that you touched on progressive and what it means to be progressive. I have made it clear over and over again, I am the original progressive voice in this city. And being progressive is not what you tweet, but what you do to help people on the streets every day. And when we talk about the Rockefeller drug laws, not only did I protest against those draconian laws as a sergeant in the police department, but I went to Albany and put together the coalition that reformed the Rockefeller drug laws. When we talk about marriage equality, did people forget? That was our bill.
That's right. That's exactly right.
We signed that into law. When we talk about all of these issues, it didn't start this year. It started so many years ago. Police reform, ending stop and frisk, testifying in federal court to do so, equality in our classrooms. All of these issues that we look at, we've allowed the term being progressive to be hijacked by those who do not have a track record of putting in place real progressive changes. And I am not going to surrender my progressive credentials. Being progressive is not just closing Rikers Island. It's closing the pipeline that feeds Rikers Island. Being progressive is not merely stating that you're going to have a hospital in communities open. It is ensuring that people could have the right health care so they don't have to depend on dialysis centers and hospitals. Being progressive is not merely having a school building. It is ensuring that our children have the right tools inside those school buildings that are really far beyond what people are even talking about. Something simple as washing machines. You have children who are not going to school every day because they don't have clean clothing. And that is the difference in our style of progressive leadership. And I agree with you. We see eye to eye that we must put in place real changes for people on the ground. And that's what I represent. And I said it then and I'll say it again. I am the face of the Democratic Party. Those countless number of men and women, everyday workers, that they want safe streets, they want their children educated, they want to stop hearing gunshots instead of alarm clocks. They want to ensure that they can be employed and live in an affordable city. Those are those bread and butter issues that I believe is crucial to not only the city of New York, but this entire country. And I'm Team New York. I'm Team New York. I am not going to engage in all the differences in the debates. I wear one jersey, New York City. And that is who I'm going to stand up for. I did it as a cop when I put on a bulletproof vest for 22 years and I stood on the street corners and protected the children and families of the city. My son won't grow up in a city that I grew up in. That is not going to happen. With a 13-year-old baby assassinated in the Bronx in broad daylight, what appears to be a retaliatory shooting. And no one wants to talk about that. That's unacceptable. And so I appreciate not only the President of the United States, our President brought this conversation to our nation's capital. We have ignored this conversation so much, and it was frustrating to hear everyone talk about assault rifles. We have a handgun problem, but the victims are black and brown and poor. And now to see the governor continue to amplify this conversation. I remember when we talked about the high-speed ballistic ammunition, and we pushed that through Albany. We have to engage in this conversation. It's happening every day in our cities, but not a heavy-handed policing model, a holistic model. And what the governor is rolling out, it is a complement to what the President of the United States stated. How do we do employment, youth engagement, making sure we put money into the hotspots, crisis management teams? How do we redefine the ecosystem of public safety so that we can identify what is the police role in that ecosystem as well as some of the other entities in that system, and treat gun violence as a public health emergency? We pushed back on the pandemic and reopened our city. Now we have to deal with the pandemic of violence that's real. And many of us in this room, we're insulated from it. If I were to ask you, do you know someone who was shot and killed in the last year, your hands won't go up. Go into a classroom in Brownsville and ask a classroom of students, how many of you lost someone to gun violence? How many of you lost a family member who was shot? you would get 8 out of 10 of those children raise their hands. Those are the people we have ignored. We've normalized violence in our city and the feeders of violence in our city and in our entire country. That's what this is about. And so I'm encouraged with the police department has done, with the gun suppression unit, the number of arrests. We need to do a better job in giving them the support that they deserve. I'm encouraged with the money. This is real money that we're putting into this problem. And it's really impressive what the governor is going to announce today and continue to announce and roll out with their team. And I'm also encouraged with the energy that we're seeing across this entire city, that we're recognizing we must fix this problem because it's tied into our economic recovery. The prerequisite to prosperity is public safety and justice. No one is going to come back to our multi-billion-dollar tourism industry if 3-year-olds are shot in Times Square. It's just not going to happen. No one is getting back on our subway system to fill the office towers in Manhattan if they've been shoved on the subway tracks. We're just not going to turn around this city. We're going to lose those high-income earners because the income that comes from the 65,000 New Yorkers that are paying 51% of our taxes, that's paying for our teachers and firefighters and police officers. If they flee to Miami, so too are their tax dollars fleeing as well. We need them here, and we need them to be part of our economic recovery. So it's not about turning against each other. It's turning towards each other and ensure that we can turn this around with employment, with support, with mental health professionals, giving jobs. Jobs equal dignity, and it equals opportunity. And so today, we will not accept a force or either an argument that we have to have justice or public safety. They go together. And using that mechanism, we're going to have a safe city where we can raise healthy children and families. And I look forward to the partnership with this administration, as well as the partnership with Washington, D.C., to finally turn around the systemic poverty and crime that's pervasive in far too many communities in the city. So again, Governor, I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. Thank you very much.
Well said. Beautiful. Questions? Myself or?
Governor, in 2013, you passed the SAFE Act and said that it would usher in a new era of safety in New York City and New York State. The criticism at the time was that it was cracking down on legal gun owners and wasn't doing much to sort of stem the tide of illegal guns that were coming into New York. Given where we are now, was that criticism correct?
No. No. The problem with guns is on multiple levels, right? Assault weapons, high-capacity magazines that can kill 20 people, that are not used in hunting, that are not of any bona fide sportsman purpose, were outlawed by the SAFE Act. We also said we have a different issue, which is we have the strongest gun laws in the state of New York. In the state of New York are the strongest gun laws in the nation. We have a major illegal gun problem where guns are coming in from out of state. 74% of the guns used in crimes are coming from out of state. Part of this initiative, we announced a new state police task force to do border control and work with the regional states to stop that. But the SAFE Act worked. The senator is exactly right. It was very hard to pass. We were the first ones to pass it. We took a lot of political heat and political damage for doing that. It was controversial, but it was right. It was right, and it saved lives. I don't want to jinx us, but you look at the number of mass casualty shootings in New York State versus the rest of the country, especially those done with assault weapons. New York is way at the bottom of the list. We saved lives.
So the 13-year-old that you just mentioned in the Bronx who was killed, I'd like to ask you and the governor about that. A Bronx cop told us, related to not only that killing, but you mentioned the cycle of retaliation among the gang killings. It was 3 Bronx teens within 5 days. The cop told us, quote, everyone is walking around with a gun because they're more afraid of getting shot than getting arrested. They're being sent to family court instead of being prosecuted as adults. Do you have any concern about this being an unintended consequence of the age legislation?
And first of all, I agree with the first part of that officer's assessment that there is a lack of fear of being caught with a gun, which is very dangerous. And we need to connect the dots. I believe the state lawmakers had a good intention with raise the age, but if you don't give those young people who are carrying a gun the real services they need and identify these troubled young people beforehand, we must have intervention and prevention. I've stated this over and over again. Intervention is right now. We have to go after the guns on the street. But we have to have the prevention plan that's in place. I remember as a lieutenant, a young 11-year-old was in the precinct with his third robbery carrying a gun. And I talked to that young person when he was in the juvenile room to learn that he was raising himself, his mother was on crack, his dad was incarcerated, and he was actually raising himself. He was out of school for a whole year, and there was no indicator. No one notified anyone that this baby was out of school. So when that child gets that gun and commits that crime, there was already a crime that took place in every agency in the city that was supposed to identify and protect him. I guarantee you, if you do an analysis of those young people who committed those shootings, I bet you they have learning disabilities. I bet you they have proficiency issues. I bet you they have some issues at home. We are failing and betraying these children. The real crime is what we're doing to them as well as what's happening in the street. So yes, we need to look at all of these new laws that are taking place and don't have unintended consequences based on how we enact them.
Mayoral debates, you mentioned that you were asked if you would accept the governor's endorsement. You did not raise your hand during one of the mayoral debates. You said in the past that if powerful men prey on women, action should be taken against them. What's changed in your opinion about the governor in those few months?
Well, first of all, I didn't get an endorsement today. The governor said that he would work with me, and I'm sure he would have worked with any mayor that is in office. I think an investigation is taking place. Let the investigation go to its outcome. I mean, that's the system of justice that I protected in the city and will continue to do so. And the system of investigation will determine the outcome of that.
Governor, two quick questions. First, why are you optimistic that your relationship with Eric Adams will be markedly different from the one that you've had with Mayor de Blasio? Is that a function of personality, of ideology, or something else? And secondly, the AP has reported that there's a significant discrepancy between your government's count and the federal government's count of COVID deaths. So how do you explain that discrepancy and why publicizing the tally?
Yeah, first, I know Mayor de Blasio, obviously. I know Eric Adams, and I can tell you that I think Eric Adams and I are going to work very well together. I believe he believes the same philosophy of government, which it's not what you say. It's not about the politics. It's about the performance. It's about making a difference in people's lives. When you are an executive, as opposed to a legislator, as opposed to an advocate, you are charged with accomplishing things. I either build an airport or I don't. I build a bridge or I don't. I pass a budget or I don't. We either get our hands around gun violence or we don't. We either get the crime rate down or we don't. We either say to the people in this region, New York City is safe, come back, move back, bring your business, open up, take the subway, it's safe, or we don't. It's binary. And Eric Adams gets that. He gets that. He has a progressive. There's nothing theoretical about being a progressive. You're there to make change for people. And that is what Eric believes. That's what I believe. You're only as good as what you accomplish. It's not about what you say. Have you improved the lives of New Yorkers who need help? Yes or no? Well, I tried, I thought about it. I have a proposal. I did a press release. I did a long paper. I gave a speech on how it could be done. Did you do it? Did you accomplish it? Or did you not? That's what it means to be a New York progressive. Help me. Did you help me or did you not help me? And look at the state of affairs. look at the problems, look at gun violence, look at homelessness, look at crime, look at the number of people who don't have confidence in this city, who are saying, I'm not ready to come back. I'm afraid to take the subways. I'm afraid to walk down the streets. You say, go to the restaurant. I'm afraid that I may be assaulted by a mentally ill homeless person. That is the agenda to target. As far as the COVID reporting, we have always reported lab-tested COVID results. That's what our reporting has always been. CDC asks for additional information on, I forget their terminology, possible or presumed or COVID deaths, which we report to them and then they report.
There were a couple of incidents involving these dirt bikes. Some shots were fired in Times Square, also in the Bronx. Those of us who live on the Upper West Side see this every single night. And it's not as serious, no, as a gang killing, but it certainly contributes to the feeling of, I think, lawlessness that a lot of us sense in the city. For both of you, what can be done about that? Because we see, and we don't expect the police to throw themselves in the roadway and stop them, but we see police all over Columbus Circle standing there,
Yeah, but
nothing's done. So
Yeah.
what can be done?
All right, let's get a little real. Let's get a little Brooklyn and a little Queens, okay? Out of Borough, guys. First of all, I do believe gun violence has not gotten the attention. It's got media attention, but it has not sparked the popular outrage that it should, because 77% of the victims are black and brown. And poorer communities have endured problems for much, much longer, which if they were happening in other communities, I think there would have been much less tolerance. That is true. Second, your point is different. General sense of lawlessness in the city. Yes, I hear it all the time. And there is a general sense of lawlessness in the city. And it comes at a very frightening period of time, because you still have people making decisions about what they're going to do vis-a-vis New York City and what their future is. I talk to businesses all day long, begging them to come back to New York City and tell their employees now to come back to New York City. And what they say to me is, look, I'd love to come back, and my people would love to come back, but, and then there's always a but, they're afraid. They hear about the subways. They took the subway, they're afraid on the subways. They think there's a lawlessness in the city. And that's why I think Eric Adams is going to just understand this on so many levels. Law is what prevents chaos. We are one of the most dense environments on the globe. You can't put 9 million people in a place, different religions, different ethnicities, different orientations, and say, all right, you have a dirt bike, you get to ride it wherever you want to ride it, because that's freedom and that's liberty. You have to enforce the law. Otherwise, you have chaos, and otherwise you infringe the rights of everyone. Well, you have to enforce the law with a police department that respects the community. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how will that change? How will you change the perception of lawlessness? And this is a question for both of you. And how do you change, the police commissioner says it over and over again, there seems to be no consequences to crime or gun crime. The 16-year-old in the Bronx was arrested 3 times in the past 3 months with a gun, and he's back out on the street.
Unacceptable. Unacceptable. First, this has become a national problem. We're watching in San Francisco, their most affluent communities turning into a shanty town. In Portland, you have a city within a city where the police are not allowed to go into. Right here in New York, you're seeing the same thing, Washington Square Park, not only for the people who live around the park, but those who, my son and I walk through the park oftentimes just to talk. Someone sitting next to us injecting themselves with heroin. The police is right there. There's just a sense that we have a city where any and everything goes. And it is impacting how you run a city. I was in Washington Heights with Congressman Espaillat, where the residents of Washington Heights were sharing your concern. the dangerous atmosphere of driving three-wheelers up and down the sidewalk. So what we must do is turn the page on policing and community relationships. Rebuild trust between the two. Let our police officers know, I have your back, but you're going to have the backs of the public that you sworn to protect. There's a real divide, and we can't ignore it. It exists. I speak to the officers all the time, and I speak to community groups all the time. And then we're going to enforce the laws in our city. These laws are already on the books. And then partner with the state. Why are we selling three-wheelers when we know they can't be used on the street? Why aren't we demanding before they purchase that they have insurance? We could put the laws in place. Before you buy it, you must have insurance, and it must be registered already. The majority of these three-wheelers and illegal bikes, they're not registered, they're not insured. And then we can put a real operation in place to catch those three-wheelers, confiscate them, put them in storage. And then we must really look at our judges. Our judges are not giving bail on cases where they are allowed to give bails. They're refusing to use the Kendra's law on mental health issues. We have thrown up our hands and we have surrendered our city. It's time for us to ensure our city is for the working class, everyday people who are following the laws and saying that government is going to make sure we protect them as well.
So it sounds like you want more people in jail and more people arrested. Is that a fair sum? Right now, I understand you want prevention, but right now, is that what you want?
I don't believe anywhere in my dialogue that I stated that at all. And for a person who spent 22 years advocating on not having heavy-handed policing, I'm a little surprised you would say that, because my record speaks for itself. It's having the right approach to public safety. If you steal an apple, you should not be stealing in jail. If you are poor and can't have something to eat and we didn't provide that for you, you should not be sitting in jail. But if you shot a 13-year-old child, assassinated them, you need to go to jail. If you discharged a gun and took the life or endangered innocent people, you need to go to jail. Jail should be for violent criminals, not for people who did not get the opportunities they deserve. That's what I'm saying. I want to be clear on that. I fought to stop heavy-handed policing, and I'm not going to allow that to come back to the city.
So what do
Let
you
me,
say to the
excuse me one
DAs?
second, Juliet, if I can. See, and I say this respectfully, that type of question, the way you posed it, is part of the problem. That's what makes the dialogue oppositional. So you're saying you're in favor of putting people in jail, and jail is bad. Obviously, nobody wants to put anybody in jail. I've closed more state prisons than any governor in the history of the state of New York. I've closed more state prisons than anyone in the history of the state of New York. Oh, so you have no police and no jails. No. You do everything you can to keep a person out of jail, starting with when they're young and in a community that doesn't have the services and the education and the opportunity, which is what we're going to be talking about now. Spotting those families in crisis, spotting the mental health issue, spotting the substance abuse, providing a job so the young person says, oh, there's an alternative to the gang. I can actually get a job. Do that. Criminal justice laws that say this is a minor crime, this is a major crime, this is diversion. You want to put as few people in jail as possible. But if you have a dangerous individual who can hurt people, then yes, there is a place for a criminal justice system, and there is a place for a jail. And because I say there are some people who need to go to jail, that doesn't make me a bad person. It is reality. Well, in theory, we should have a system where nobody goes to jail. Yes, I agree with you in theory. Real progressive, ultra progressive, no jail for anybody. Yes, utopia. I agree. People without sin and without crime and without malice, and we have no jails. Yes, humanity's not quite there yet. So let's deal with the reality.
What do you say to the DAs? What do you say?
Hold on, I'm sorry.
Just elaborate on what you want. What do you
s-
want judges to do differently with regard to bail?
Okay, first let's deal with the Kindred's law. I want them to follow it. This is a way of having people who are dealing with mental health illnesses to be compelled to take their medicine. We need to follow that. I want them to follow the existing law. If a person does a violent crime, if you shoot someone, on Monday, you should not be out on Tuesday. We're finding that there's a reluctancy for judges to follow the law where they can issue bail. Violent offenders, particularly repeated violent offenders, who have made it clear that they're going to continue to harm innocent people. Our criminal justice system should not be protecting them, should be protecting the innocent people of the city. That's what I believe, that's what I have fought for, and I will continue to fight for.
So what do you say to the DAs who don't want to prosecute certain crimes? We're talking about a fair beating, we're talking about trespassing, a lot of these are quality of life issues that affect everyday New Yorkers.
Right, and those are quality of life issues. And those are the issues that we should sit down and talk about. How do we prevent that? Because I jumped the turnstile because I didn't have money to get to work. So we should look at what is causing the jumping the turnstile. Should we have a reduced fare Metro card that impacts other families? We don't want to criminalize poverty. And there's a clear line for me between violent crimes, predatory crimes, and those crimes what people are doing because of the circumstances they're in. There's a clear line for that. That's what I don't want to criminalize.
Let me say this, is that we have a community meeting that is waiting for us. These are, we're announcing a new partnership to deal with gun violence. That does everything we said. That is a holistic approach. And what we've done is a public health approach where we have targeted the hot spots, just like COVID, where you have the majority of the shootings. And we're going to reach out to those youth in those targeted hot spots with jobs, intervention, et cetera. And we're going to do it through the local community groups with state resources. A big piece of it is 4,000 jobs available now citywide and making those connections. And we're going to meet with those communities. I'll get you the total. I think it's in the press release, Marcia. Let me just end saying, because we have them waiting.
Will you fund your portion of the Gateway project, Governor?
Let's just, let me say, on Gateway, we have an MOU, well, we have an agreement on the first phase of Gateway, as you know. I am so excited about Eric Adams. Yes, these are all tough problems. They're all tough problems. But this city has been through tough problems before. You've been around a little bit. You remember the 70s. You remember the 90s. You remember when this city has seen high crime. You remember when you've seen high rates of homelessness. When people said, oh, New York City's future is doomed. After 9/11, people said nobody will go back, right? Don't underestimate New Yorkers. And don't underestimate New Yorkers with quality leadership and a person who is willing to stand up with courage and competence to get it done. That is the formula, getting it done. And Eric Adams, I believe, is that person. We have the community group waiting, please, and they've been very patient. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.